Good afternoon, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you again for joining me. Today is September the 17th, 2022. I have some news to share with you. I always appreciate your presence. So I will start about Ethiopia's Board of Election. The decision it makes on Prosperity Party, even though it came late or it came with the blessing of Abiy Ahmed. We don't know why they are, decide to decide about the past election. The Prosperity Party, Abiy Ahmed, how he conducted the conference and how he was elected himself. You might already seen that video. He was sitting in front of the conference attendees and he was nominating himself and he was calling for the vote himself. So that is wrong. That's what, according to international standard, it was criticized. But Ethiopian Board of Election just wake up now and say that is wrong. And Prosperity Party is now required to have a conference within 4 months and elect the president or other board members. So let's listen to this Amharic Awaze YouTube talking about this, and the Ethiopian Board of Election became courageous at the last minute to criticize, to order Prosperity Party, and to say what Prosperity Party did is illegal. It's a bold move, really. It's a bold. If it really comes through the election board, if it's not with the blessing of Prosperity Party, it's very hard under Abiy Ahmed to say that. But let's listen to it, and we'll continue to other news.
ግና ፓርቲ ጠቅላላ ጉባኤ በድጋሚ እንዲያካሄድ ታዘዘ። ምርጫ ቦርድ የዶክተር አብይን የብልጽግና ፓርቲ ፕሬዝዳንትነት ምርጫ ውድቅ አድርጓል። ገዢው የብልጽግና ፓርቲ የመጀመሪያ ጠቅላላ ጉባኤውን ከመጋቢት 2 እስከ 4 2014 በአዲስ አበባ ባካሄደበት ወቅት እጩ የሆነ ሰው በአስመራጭነት መሰየሙ ትክክል እንዳልነበር የኢትዮጵያ ብሔራዊ ምርጫ ቦርድ አስታውቋል። የብልጽግናን ፓርቲ ጠቅላላ ጉባኤ አስመልክቶ ቦርዱ ይፋ ባደረገው ሪፖርት በጉባኤው ላይ የፓርቲው ፕሬዝዳንትና ምክትል ፕሬዝዳንት አመራረጥን በተመለከተ እጩ የሆነ ሰው አስመራጭ የሚሆን ከሆነ በተለይም አስመራጭ የነበሩት የሀገር መሪ በመሆናቸው በምርጫው ሂደት ላይ ተጽዕኖ የሚፈጥር አሰራር መሆኑን ገልጿል። የብልጽግና ፓርቲ ጠቅላላ ጉባኤ ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር አብይ አህመድ ፕሬዝዳንት አድርጎ በመረጠበት ወቅት ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትሩ ራሳቸው አስመራጭ ሆነው ከመድረክ ሐሳብና አስተያየት ሲቀበሉ እንደነበር ይታወሳል። በዚህ የምርጫ ወቅት ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትሩ ለአንድ ፕሬዝዳንትና ለሁለት ምክትል ፕሬዝዳንቶች እጩዎችን ከጉባኤ አባላት በጥቆማ በመቀበል አብይ እጩ መሆን አለበት ወይስ የለበትም የሚሉ ተሳታፊዎች ሐሳብ እንዲሰጡ ከተሳታፊዎች ፊት ለፊት ተቀምጠው ምርጫውን ሲያካሂዱ ተስተውሎ ነበር። የብልጽግና ፓርቲ ጉባኤ ምርጫ ከተካሄደ ከ6 ወራት በኋላም ሪፖርቱን ይፋ ያደረገው የኢትዮጵያ ብሔራዊ ምርጫ ቦርድ ፓርቲው በጠቅላላ ጉባኤ የምርጫ አካሄዱን አስመልክቶ እጩ ሆኖ የሚቀርብ ሰው አስመራጭ እንዳይሆን የሚከለክል አንቀጽ በማስፈር መተዳደሪያ ደንቡን አስተካክሎ ወደፊት በሚያካሄደው ጠቅላላ ጉባኤ እንዲያጸድቅ አሳስቧል። በሌላ በኩል ፓርቲውን ወክለው በምርጫው የሚሳተፉ አካላት ስለሚመረጡበት ሁኔታም ማዕከላዊ ኮሚቴው መመሪያ እንደሚያወጣ በተገለጸው መሰረት መመሪያ ወጥቶ ለቦርዱ እንዲቀርብ ጠይቋል። የማዕከላዊ ኮሚቴ ስብሰባም በተካሄደበት ወቅት በተደረገ የስራ አስፈጻሚ ኮሚቴ ምርጫም የቦርዱ ታዛቢዎች መከልከላቸውን በመጥቀስ በማዕከላዊ ኮሚቴ ስብሰባ የቦርዱ ታዛቢዎች አለመገኘታቸው የስራ አስፈጻሚ ኮሚቴ አባላት አመራረጥን እንዳይታዘቡ መደረጋቸውን ቦርዱ አስታውሷል። የቦርዱ የውሳኔ ሪፖርት እንደሚያሳየው የፓርቲው የቁጥጥርና ኢንስፔክሽን ኮሚሽን አባላት ብዛት፣ ስብጥርና አመራረጥን በተመለከተ ግልጽ የሆነ መመሪያም የለውም። በሌላ በኩል የፓርቲው የቁጥጥርና ኢንስፔክሽን አባላት በአዋጁና በፓርቲው መተዳደሪያ ደንብ መሰረት ምርጫው ነፃና ፍትሃዊ በሆነ መንገድ በሚስጥር በሚሰጥ ድምጽ የተመረጡ ሳይሆን ለጠቅላላ ጉባኤ ብቻ ቀርበው የተሾሙ መሆናቸውን አስታውቋል። እናም ፓርቲው በመጪዎቹ 4 ወራት ውስጥ ጠቅላላ ጉባኤ በመጥራት የቁጥጥርና ኢንስፔክሽን ኮሚሽን አባላት ምርጫ እንዲያካሄድ አሳስቧል ሲል ሪፖርተር ጋዜጣ ዘግቧል። የአውሮፓ ህብረት
Hyundai Tucson versus Honda CRV. Hyundai Tucson wins every time. Now get 3.29%.
Somali president.
Okay, I'll come back to Somali president's visits here in the United States. So that is really the election board, even though it came late, it should be appreciated. It came too late. It was openly done illegally. It should be null and nullified. And Abiy, should be fired, really. It's a wrong, illegal election. But the election board, recognized that election and allowed the prime minister to stay in power. What happened? All the chaos, all the killing, all the war, all the inflation, all the problems Ethiopia is facing now, because of his leadership. It is a failure from the beginning, and it should be nullified. It should be removed. But now they say, they have to do it again. They have to have General Assembly within 4 months, elect the election security inspection body. And it's really, when you see the election in Kenya and the election in Ethiopia, it is totally big difference. You see big difference, really. Kenyans practiced well. The democracy over there is very encouraging. Ethiopians can learn from it. And this guy is sitting there electing himself as a president and electing other 2 vice presidents illegally. Ethiopians allow it. There is no in the constitution. There is no in the constitution which allow him to do that. But Ethiopians, he playing on Ethiopians' mind, really. He is thinking Ethiopians are stupid. He can do whatever he want to do. Nobody challenge him in the court. The court belongs to him. The federal police, everything is under his control. The bank belongs to him. So he can play whatever he want to play. That's why we can see. But for whatever reason, we should appreciate the election board for now. Whatever reason they came up with this decision at the last minute, ordering Prosperity Party to have its general conference and conduct itself appropriately. And, the Ethiopians, I repeatedly said, this is, it's a shame, illegal practice. You allow to break the system, to break the law, to break the constitution of Ethiopia. The constitution will not allow him to do this, but he is doing it because you are being stupid. You are not resisting. You are not saying anything. You are, supporting this guy. You are not practicing your right. So that's a courageous decision for now. Let it be clear, even though it came late. Burtukan Mideksa did what she did. She closed she shut down many political parties. She shut down the political party offices, nullified different parties to allow Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to win the election in the way he chose himself. But now she came late and announced this, which is good. She should be courageous. She should be appreciated. Thank you. So let's continue with other news, and I will come back to a couple of videos. This one is the good news again. United Nations ship leaves Ukraine with wheat for Ethiopia. So this is maybe a second round again after Russia-Ukraine war. So despite Abiy Ahmed denying and the Prosperity Party denying about the challenge Ethiopians are facing, but the United Nations is still sending basic foods to Ethiopia. So Abiy Ahmed is denying everything, giving wrong information to the global community so that our people cannot get help. He's saying no hunger, no drought. They are, Ethiopia is ready to export wheat to the world. So that's a lie. Ethiopians are suffering. Millions of cattle died. People are suffering, starving. That's why the United Nations is sending this shipment. Credit for this one is Reuters. The third vessel chartered by the United Nations World Food Program, WFP, left Ukraine's Chornomorsk Black Sea port with around 30,000 tons of wheat on board. Ukraine's infrastructure ministry said on Saturday. The vessel is headed for Ethiopia. According to the United Nations estimates, Ethiopia is on the verge of food crisis. The ministry said in a statement, on the verge of food crisis, Ethiopia. That's the international view, the information they have about Ethiopia. What Abiy Ahmed and his associates are telling us and to the global community is misleading, is very dangerous, and it can create massive human life loss. It is said that in partnership with WFP, 3 ships loaded with more than 90,000 tons of wheat are on their way to Ethiopia and Yemen. We plan to export another 190,000 tons, which are currently being purchased by United Nations partners, the ministry said, adding that besides the Icaria Angel, another 9 vessels have left Ukraine ports on Saturday. The country's grain exports have slumped since the start of the war because its Black Sea ports, a key route for shipment, were closed off, driving up global food prices and promoting fears of shortage in Africa and in the Middle East. The 3 Black Sea ports were unblocked at the end of July under a deal between Moscow and Kiev, brokered by the United Nations and Turkey. So we appreciate the United Nations for sending wheat or this basic food item to Ethiopia and Yemen, despite the denial and misleading information from Ethiopian government, from Abiy Ahmed. This is about warning to civil society in Ethiopia, civil societies in Ethiopia. If you remember, about 35 civil societies spoke up against the war. Now this is from the government, warning any civil society under the name of, you know, because these are acting against the sovereignty of Ethiopia. So they are coming after them. They are trying to silence them. So let me read what it says. Authority vows to hold civil society organizations, CSO, working against sovereignty, public interest to account. Jima Dilbo, Director General of the Federal Authority for Civil Society Organizations, ACSO, told state media that the agency would strengthen its work to make civil society organizations working against Ethiopians' sovereignty and the public interest accountable by law. Jimma further pointed out that the authority was working with the relevant parties to establish a strong monitoring and control system. However, he has also said that the support of the federal government to civil society organizations will continue in accordance with the purpose for which they were established. The news comes a week after a group of 35 local civil society organizations issued a joint statement calling for peace in Ethiopia and an end to the ongoing military hostilities in parts of Tigray, Afar, and Amara regions, as well as other conflicts involving the federal and Oromia regional state forces on the one hand and the Oromo Liberation Army OLA, known by the government as OLF Shane, on the other. The pressure called by the group was, however, blocked by security forces, forcing the group to issue the statement online. Okay, even that time, when they tried to raise this issue, call for peace in the country, they were forced not to do that. That's a very dangerous country, really. A news report by Wazema Radio said that the group of civil societies organizations was warned by a senior government official who criticized the statement for failing to consider the danger the country was facing now and failing to explain the damage done by the TPLF, because they didn't criticize TPLF, that's why. According to Jimma, following the changes in Ethiopia, more than 4,000 organizations are operating legally in order to fully guarantee the right of civil society organizations to organize, and that most of these organizations are working in compliance with the law of the country. However, he accused some of them for standing against the interest of the country and the people, wasting money coming in the name of the people, committing embezzlement, and secretly acting as carriers for foreign agents to betray the country's sovereignty, according to the news. Really, you see how they created these different names so that they can attack them. According to the Director General, civil society organizations have been given a wide opportunity to expand the space for democracy in Ethiopia, but their duty to work independently of political influences and prioritize the interests of the country and its people. Civil society organizations that work contrary to this objective and work against the sovereignty of the country and the interests of the people will be held accountable by law. The authority has taken legal actions against such organizations found to be operating outside of their establishment purposes, he said. adding that last year alone, warning letters were sent to organizations that were found to have violated the law, and action was taken against 3 organizations to revoke their legal licenses. Similar actions will continue to be taken against those who violate the law in the future. Jimma further urged individuals and organizations to refrain from action of trying to fulfill their own and traitors' hidden agenda by sacrificing the interest of the country. Civil society organizations that are found to be in hindrance to Ethiopia's struggle to maintain its sovereignty will not escape legal responsibility. On a positive note, Jimma mentioned that most of the civil society organizations stand for the public good and support the country when it is in crisis. He cited in-kind and financial support for more than 460 million birr pledged by civil society organizations to rebuild the infrastructure destroyed Ethiopia's civil war waged by TPLF as an example. More preparations are being made to gather additional support, he said. So that is a serious legal challenge, probably shutting down of this civil society organization. It's on the way by Abiy Ahmed and his associates by using different excuses because they are speaking up against the war. They are calling for peaceful dialogue, end hostility. That's the same thing the United States is saying. So now the government is trying to attack this civil society, civil organization. That is very bad, but we'll see what they're gonna do. But the problem is the civil society, the women organization, teachers association, and the others. If they come up together, the government of Abiy Ahmed cannot do anything. Even they can challenge him to resign. They can challenge him, like Sudanese. Sudanese are still on the street, despite the security forces are killing them, arresting them. They are still on the street for freedom and justice, for civilian leadership. Ethiopians, they should learn from Sudan and others to speak up against this Abiy Ahmed. Is not worse. His leadership is a failure for that country. So they have to end their silence. They have to speak up, really. If not, he will come after, each separately, individually, like he is doing now here against civil society. So this is Eritrea issue army mobilization call as Ethiopia fighting resumes. Canada says, and the different media already said about this. Those individuals aged less than 60 years old are called upon to fight. So there is Isaias Afwerki is facing some challenge, a threat to his power. Eritrea is mobilizing armed forces due to the re-eruption of the conflict in northern Ethiopia, the Canadian government said on Saturday, raising fears that the fighting may intensify in a war that has already displaced millions and triggered a humanitarian disaster across northern Ethiopia. Local authorities have issued a general call for mobilization of armed forces in response to the conflict in northern #Ethiopia, said a Canadian travel advice tweet. The Canadian government urged its citizens in Eritrea to limit their movement and monitor local media. It was not clear from the statement if Canada believed Eritrea was mobilizing forces for offensive or defensive purposes. Eritrean Information Minister Yemane Gebremeskel and the Ethiopian government spokesperson Legesse Tulu didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Guards at embassies, United Nations compound, and the residents had expressed fear they would be taken from their position due to the widespread conscription, a Horn of Africa diplomat told Reuters. One Eritrean exile told Reuters that two family members inside Eritrea had said the government was sending citizens under 60 to fight, and that authorities had warned that deserters would have their house confiscated. If you refuse to fight, your house will be confiscated. That's the worst kind of dictatorship. Abiy is trying to learn from this kind of leadership. Isaias Afwerki. If you don't want to fight, they will take your property and your house. Reuters could not independently verify this account. Getachew Reda, spokesman for the Tigray People Liberation Front, TPLF, which controls Ethiopia's northern region of Tigray, said in a tweet on Saturday that Eritrea was calling up 60-year-old reservists to fight. Eritrea sent troops into Tigray to back the Ethiopian military after fighting broke out between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF in November 2020. Credit Reuters. So that is the situation. Yes, so maybe he lost most of the military. That's why he is now calling on reservists, even the aged one, to fight. We will see. And he was called upon to leave Ethiopia, and but still there, still killing and destroying the Tigray region. Plus, he's also influencing in other parts of the country. So this is about Ethiopia in general, reported by AP. This is about the country's economy, really, under Abiy Ahmed leadership. Here are the realities. Ethiopia, once home of Africa's fastest growing economy, 11% average, 11%. This is before Abiy Ahmed came to power. Now, what is the average of the country's growing economy? Is 3.8 for 2021, for 2022. It's a big loss from 11% to 3.8. It's also, it was a major political player in the Horn of Africa and in the global stage before Abiy Ahmed came to power. Now who took over? Kenya, thanks to Abiy Ahmed, failed leadership. The country is facing high inflation in a decade. Also under restriction of foreign exchange. Ethiopia is under restriction of foreign exchange. Also mounting debt. Too much money on Ethiopia, can't pay it. They are begging to extend or to cancel the debt. That is thanks to Ethiopians who are supporting Abiy Ahmed and who are just silent on that country. But the country is collapsing because of their silence. Massive spending on the war, $1.7 billion, 1.7 billion, massive spending on military conflict and military war. The war he is not winning, but he's destroying humanity. He is destroying the future generation, the young generation, for who can be a resource for that country. Rising poverty for ordinary citizens. Rising poverty for ordinary citizens. Destruction of the country's properties. And plus unknown, unimaginable cost to human life, to the war, because of the ongoing war in the north and plus other parts of the country. Unknown number of people died, thousands and thousands, and thousands of them injured, filling up hospitals. Okay, we don't have the clear information about the cost of human lives, injuries, destruction, because we don't have independent medias. Abiy Ahmed purposely stopped international media from reporting because he don't want to get accounted for. So, and lost foreign investment, foreign financial aids, and incentives like AGOA, U.S. free market for Ethiopia's agricultural and industry product. Free, I think it's a 500 million a year or plus, just because of Abiy Ahmed leadership. Ethiopians are still silent, despite he's illegally elected himself as a leader in that country. And a weakened diplomatic relationship and endless civil war in multiple fronts. So that's the general assessment about Ethiopia and Ethiopians. I don't know what time they're gonna wake up. Really, it is their right, according to that country's constitution. They can challenge the government, but they are silent. They are willingly silent, or they're scared of the security and undercover operatives. That is the reality. But still, they have to come out like Sudanese and challenge this government. If not, the country will collapse under their feet while they are, just waiting. This is about United States welcoming an appointment of Uhuru Kenyatta as a peace envoy to Ethiopia and Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The U.S. State Department Bureau of African Affairs said the U.S. welcomes the appointment of Uhuru Kenyatta as peace envoy for the conflict in northern Ethiopia and in eastern DRC. Kenya's President William Ruto said during his inauguration on Tuesday, 13 September, that he has appointed outgoing President Kenyatta to continue chairing discussions on behalf of the people of Kenya on the peace initiatives in our region, including both in Ethiopia and in the Great Lakes region. President William pledged the support of the government of the Kenya and myself in particular to the initiatives, and adding that former President Kenyatta has agreed with the appointment graciously. That's under the quotation. That's William Ruto's statement. The State Department Bureau of African Affairs said this was a critical time for both conflicts and that Kenyatta's work will be crucial. Shortly before the visit of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Kenya in November 2021, former President Kenyatta arrived in Addis Ababa on 14 November and was received by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to his second home. He has also met with President Sahle-Work Zewde in Nairobi. Kenyatta and Secretary Blinken discussed shared interest as member of the UN Security Council, including addressing regional security issues such as Ethiopia, Somalia, and Sudan, according to State Department. 2 months later, in January this year, former President Kenyatta met with the U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, David Stafford, in Nairobi, during which the two called for a peaceful resolution to Ethiopia's civil war. A strong Ethiopia is important to us. A stable Ethiopia is important to us. That's why we are committed to doing all we can to see the conflict resolved, Kenyatta said. In May this year, Prime Minister Abiy and Kenyatta have also met on the side of the African Union Extraordinary Humanitarian Summit in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, where they discussed bilateral issues of peace and development. Yeah, Abiy is evil man, really. He is evil man. If he's a human being, he will stop. He will stop the destruction of humanity in this war or in the multiple wars. You know, you can see if something is working, you continue. If not, you just stop and negotiate, settle. But he is bloodthirsty, really. Him and his associates, they are bloodthirsty. They will not stop if there is no blood for them. This is okay. This is about Tanzania. We have a right to use our resources, Tanzanian minister said. Tanzanian Energy Minister January Makamba has joined Uganda's parliament in criticizing a European Union Parliament resolution calling on the two countries to stop developing their oil and gas projects in the East African region. He told the BBC that Tanzania, like many other countries in the world, is entitled to use its resources the same way industrialized countries do for their people. It comes as Uganda and Tanzania are building the East African crude oil pipeline project, stretching 1,443 kilometers or 896 miles from Lake Albert in western Uganda to the Tanzanian port of Tanga on the Indian Ocean. The EU Parliament resolution passed on Thursday warned on human rights abuses and the social and environmental risk posed by this project. Okay, we care more about our country than other people do. We will continue to make sure this project protects local communities, protects the environment, and meets our international standards so that we will continue, but we commit to do, Tanzania's energy minister said. Uganda's deputy speaker criticized the resolution, describing it as based on misinformation and deliberate misrepresentation of key facts on environment and human rights protection. So that's EU concern about this project and the Tanzania and the Ugandan response. Okay, the last part for today's reading, second anniversary of the signing of Abraham Accords. This is press statement Anthony J. Blinken, Secretary of State. This week, we celebrate the 2-year anniversary of the signing of the Abraham Accords and the normalization agreements. These steps have been transformational for Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco. They have led to new forms of cooperation and regional integration in the Middle East and beyond, including the historic Negev Forum, which brought us together with Israel and its neighbors. We are committed to advancing and expanding upon these agreements between Israel and Arab and the Muslim majority countries to enhance regional security, prosperity, and peace. The United States looks forward to helping strengthen and deepen this partnership in the years to come. Okay, that's good. That's good. Normalization should be appreciated, but please don't forget Palestinians who have been suffering for generations, who are just at least calling for two-state solution. That issue has been more than 2 years, I think more than 2 years or 3 years, still stalled somewhere. Nobody's talking. And Palestinians are losing their land year after year. Normalization is okay, but please do help them and form the two-state solution. Not 1967 border, just the border they have now. Then we can talk about 1967 border, which is decremental for Israel. I don't know if Israel will abide by 1967 border. They came far from that border, far away, and are still expanding into Palestinian territories. So please, strengthening diplomatic relation with Israel is okay, but please don't forget the Palestinians. The United States, you can do it. US, you can do it if you determine. So that's all I have when reading. A couple of videos. One is about Somalia, US, and another one is Ambassador Linda Thomas about United Nations. So let's listen.
Then met with the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd James Austin, on Thursday. The meeting was focused on strengthening the capacity of Somalia's military to battle al-Shabaab, which U.S. generals have described as al-Qaeda's most lethal outfit. The group has been waging a deadly insurgency against Somalia's international-backed government.
June 2022, SNA has led Somali National Army has been able to partner with the local forces in the removal of al-Shabaab from 20% of the area they controlled before. We recognize that defeating al-Shabaab requires a multifaceted approach that includes effective and accountable security forces, an inclusive state-building process, the ability of the state to provide a rule of law and critical services to the public.
Somalia and the Horn of Africa have entered a crucial period of transition. This period will be especially important given the ongoing hostilities in Ethiopia, the persistent threat of al-Shabaab, which continues to launch high-profile, cruel, and brazen attacks on civilians. Our cooperation here is crucial, Mr. President, and we stand ready as your partners.
According to a report from the Pentagon's African Center for Strategic Studies, al-Shabaab has been one of the deadliest and most effective terror groups on the continent this year, accounting for an estimated 36% of all militant Islamist group violence.
Again, welcome. Thanks, everybody.
To demonstrate our own sincerity and ironclad commitment to the UN Charter, today I'm proud to announce that the United States will subscribe to 6 clear principles for responsible behavior for Security Council members. So first and foremost, we pledge to defend and act strictly in accordance with the UN Charter. We will aim to strengthen the UN's membership's faith and adherence to the UN Charter, not only in the Security Council, but throughout our actions in the UN and even in our national policies. Second, we will engage pragmatically with all Council members to address threats to international peace and security. Third, we will refrain from the use of the veto except in rare, extraordinary situations. In particular, any permanent member that exercises the veto to defend its own acts of aggression loses moral authority and should be held accountable. Fourth, we will demonstrate leadership in defending human rights and fundamental freedoms. As defenders of the Charter and international law, Security Council members ought to be global leaders in upholding human rights, both at home and abroad. Fifth, we will enhance cooperation, inclusivity, and transparency. And sixth, and finally, we will advance efforts to reform the Security Council. We should not defend an unsustainable and outdated status quo. Instead, we must demonstrate flexibility and willingness to compromise in the name of greater credibility and legitimacy. We should forge consensus around sensible and credible proposals to expand Security Council membership.
Okay, that's the last video I'm sharing for today. Thank you for joining me. So that's US stand on or promise in keeping the 6 principles about using veto power, protecting the United Nations. All they're okay there because the challenge is China and Russia. Nothing can be done, especially on Ethiopia, on the issue of Ethiopia. As long as Russia is there, as long as China is there, they're blocking even statement. You cannot even have a statement on Ethiopia. That's a challenge, yes, we know. So I hope they will abide by this international body, not because of the favor of some countries, just by the principles of humanity and by the Charter of the United Nations. I hope they will just ignore their personal interests. So that's a challenge. And the Somalia, he said they defeated Al-Shabaab from 20 different locations, which is encouraging. Okay, but please also you speak the same language, you follow the same religion. These are people, even though you give them terrorists or different names to attack them. Please sit down, talk to them. What is their interest? Can you negotiate and settle? This issue is long. Al-Shabaab has been there for a long time. Use diplomacy instead of bloodshed. Yes, you are victorious today. Maybe you remove them from 20 locations. They might also come back again, attack you. So instead of just fighting each other, start with dialogue, negotiation, and see what is the grievance they have, what are their concerns, and then settle the issue. So that's all I'm gonna say for today. And the civil societies in Ethiopians are under warning, and they might be shut down. That's the Abiy style, because the Ethiopians allow him to break any laws. They cannot say anything. They cannot demonstrate, except last time the woman tried demonstrate against the war. So the rest is silent, and the silence is killing that country. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back with other news and comment. So long. Be safe and have a nice weekend.